Well, often the idea of starting a business amongst friends sounds attractive in principle, but when a business either takes off or falls apart, it can often become a significant sticking point between business partners. Now, are there ways for people to structure businesses that protect all of their interests? Let's take a look at this with Mark Ashton still with us, Jessica Hubbard, and Dion Oberhels, CEO of Veri-Com. Mark, this is one of those issues that until you've gone through it and gone through a problem with a previous friend turned business partner, can't really relate to how critical this conversation probably is.
Yeah, I mean, I love this Groupon story at the moment. Like, I've been following Groupon for a while and saw Andrew Mason thing. And Andrew Mason's a fantastic character and he's really enjoyed the limelight and everything. But Andrew Mason is weird. I mean, like, Andrew Mason says and does the most bizarre things. Business Insider have got this thing today about all the weird things that he's done. And, as an example, he posted a clip of him doing naked yoga as a way to inspire and build up his profile. Now, jokes aside, you think that's funny, but that's your business partner. This is the guy who was offered $6 billion from Google and turned it down. These were very, very big decisions that were turned.
Clever man, but a bit too wacky.
Exactly, and the point that I'm trying to make is ultimately you need a good team to be able to pull this thing together. You may have some very, very exciting, smart people and maybe weird people. Weird people make good business, often good entrepreneurs, because they see things a little bit differently. But you've got to be able to combine the weird with the thing that kind of keeps you all together. And for me, I think the subject of building teams is important, because I think a lot of the entrepreneurs you see all want to kind of be the rock star one-man band. They're the guys that build these businesses. And suddenly, they often go wrong. I mean, we all know the failure rates for small businesses. And if you get the right team together, it can make a hell of a difference to surviving it. But you've got to do it in such a way that your interests are protected when it goes up or when it goes down.
Dion, what are your thoughts on how you choose the right business partner? What do you need to consider?
I think the most important point is to really understand what you want from your partner. A lot of upstart entrepreneurs are typically looking for a financial partner to bankroll. But it is by far the most expensive partner you can ever have, because all he's there for is to get his money back and then take a piece of yours. So,
and he doesn't perhaps necessarily see the value you add from a skills expertise perspective.
Yeah, he sees making more money out of your enthusiasm and you say him bankrolling your ideas, but it's a quick, if you get it wrong, you can end up with a small piece of your greatest idea and the rest is owned by other people. And then if you take it on a personal level, I think it's like a marriage. And we just have to talk to people that come out of a divorce to realize how bad it can go wrong. I think what's important is to understand why you need a partner. But before you ask the question why you need a partner, I say, what does your business need? Okay. Maybe what you need is not a partner. If you need sage advice, you don't need to bring a partner in for that. If you need money and you can't get it from a bank, it's probably going to be because there's something wrong in your business. So you got to know what you want, and then you can figure out whether you can get it from a partner. Maybe you don't even need a partner.
To add to that, you also need to look at what your strengths and weaknesses are and how you like to work. Some people prefer working on their own as a maverick of sorts, and they work more effectively that way. But some people are good at building consensus, they're good at networking and creating a shared vision, and those people should then perhaps go in for a business partner. But if you know that you're a loner and that's how you prefer to work, then try and design it that you can operate alone, and that financially and from a skills point of view that's viable, because it isn't always viable to work alone.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I noticed, I mean, we've had them on the show before, Spark Schools, and I remember meeting them when they were essentially, it was just a project. It was basically an MBA project that they were putting together, and there were just one or two of them, and they didn't really know where they were going. And going to the opening recently, they had ended up building up this really cool team. They'd been able to get a team together that showed they can actually execute. They got a nice bunch of skills put together. They could go to shareholders, when they needed somebody with a little bit of gravitas, not just smart MBA kids, but actual people with some business clout to be able to go and approach these guys for funding. They had this team that they could actually present, and I think that it materially changes what is a nice idea into what is a real business.
There's also that classic mistake of working with family or friends, and as you said, that can go sour quite quickly. So when you're choosing a partner, you need to be very coldly objective and don't duplicate your skills. So you see what you've got to offer, and you perhaps need to write down a list of criteria that you need in a business partner and evaluate a potential business partner solely on those criteria.
Yeah. What about the contract? I mean, forming the contract up front in terms of who's contributing what, and how also that might change, because if you've got a startup, you might have to top up the money as you go along, and one might be in more of a financial position to do that relative to the other one. So how do you go about that formulation of that contract?
It's very difficult, because in the beginning of a small business, it's like in the beginning, if I could continue to use the analogy of a marriage, I mean, what is in your wedding contract? I have nothing, you have nothing, and we'll share it. When you started the business, you don't really know what people are going to contribute as it goes along. So you got to try and keep the relationship, and that's what determines it. You can't contract yourself into a good partner. It doesn't work like that. I mean, for example, if we take Black Economic Empowerment, where a lot of companies are now challenged with the fact of bringing a partner in that they might not necessarily have thought about originally. How do you manage that relationship? There are other differences that you have to take on. But if you don't do it, you might not be able to get access to the market. Now, there it would be very important. So if you bring in a financial partner, they would come with contracts that they would specify. If you want to team up with a buddy, I think maybe a contract is not going to make the business successful.
But I mean, at some point in time, there's going to be talk of, I've contributed X amount and you've only contributed that. Yeah. And, that means I'm entitled to 60% of the business and you're only entitled to 40.
I always say that money changes everything, and it's always great to sit together, and Jessica and I, we're going to start a fancy business, we have lots of money, but when there's lots of money on the table, then everything changes. Now we start seeing the 6 or the 7 million we've made, and now how much of that is mine? I can pay my house, and you got to think through what's going to happen if you do have money on the table, because then everything changes, and it's very important that you do that before the things happen. So good contracts is really important. But fortunately, most of these things are templates. Partnerships, they are templates. Shareholding, they are templates. Just the Companies Act specify a lot of these normal relationships. So even if you just start a PDY Limited and you issue shares, there are already rules in place in terms of how the participation happens on the equity.
What's the thought on doing, one of the things I often see is you see guys coming in with, it's two mates and they've got some skills and they think they're going to build something. The formation of a genuine board of directors before you start a business. And I know it sounds grandiose, but the idea of having a group of people, including a non-exec chair or some kind of chairperson who's able to moderate it, how you remunerate them is probably some kind of equity structure. But the idea of having a board of directors that says from the word go, we are serious about what we're doing here.
Let me put it this way. Veri-Com, a company that I'm with, we built that up over 5 years from 0 to 5 million turnover. And you know what, the board was in place from the beginning because we had corporate shareholders that we brought into the company. But you don't really expect value from your board. You don't go to the board for the board to tell you. They're there with some sage advice. And when you're in the trenches and you're an entrepreneur, sometimes they just slow you down. And many of you really good entrepreneurs, people that can make things happen, if you ask him to explain to you why it's going to work, he's going to just walk away.
But maybe that's what some entrepreneurs do need, is someone to say, well, logically explain why you're making this decision.
Well, George Bernard Shaw said that the reasonable man adapts to society and the unreasonable man tries to adapt society to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. Now, that's an entrepreneur. He's by definition unreasonable because he believes he's right. He can do whatever he can. He's disruptive. He tries to do what he can. And if you keep on latching stuff onto him that you think makes it valuable, you might just slow him down. In some cases, that could be the breakthrough that take him to the next level because he's been sort of maybe too rogue and now it settles down. A board has its functions, but I think when the company is a little bit more substantial, they can make a contribution. But if you get the right people, the right advisors on your board, they can make a contribution.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things I find very interesting. You find a lot of young guys. I mean, I'm 31 and I've seen almost all my mates have at some point in their early 20s, they were going into business for themselves, and that means printing the business cards and nice little flyers and whatever, but they never actually get into business for themselves because they don't actually know what they're trying to achieve. They think it's a license to print money, and I think that often the benefit of some senior people, the guys that have actually been there. Often you speak to the funders and they say, what entrepreneurs do you fund? They fund entrepreneurs in their 40s and 50s because they've been there, they've done that, they actually know what they've got a little bit of common sense in it as well. And I think that's an interesting thing to look at from the value of bringing in senior people.
We in one of our previous businesses always said we would only invest in an entrepreneur after he's at least gone bankrupt once, because then he's got to understand the pressure, and he's not bulletproof, and he's not gift to mankind. He actually has to work, or she actually has to bring the extra weight in. So that experience, that scars on the back, is critically important, because that's why they say employ the youth while they still know everything. I mean, it's so dangerous for a youngster to get into his own business. Rather go work for somebody, get the experience, and then when you know what you can do, then go and do it. But you can lose a lot of money.
Yes, don't worry.
All of it.
I've felt the pain. Yeah,
Scars on the back.
There we go.
What about just going back to this issue of the one contributing skills and expertise, the other contributing money, and kind of that an uneven balance there. Are there ways to quantify or qualify what those skills mean in nominal terms, in rand terms?
I think it's very difficult, but I think in all small, we're talking about small companies. You're getting your partner on board. You're trying to. Communication is the most important thing. You cannot build a business if you don't trust your partner. And if you trust your partner, the paperwork is not critical. Yes, you need it as a backup, you need insurance, etc. But if you can sit down and talk through these things, so what is your view on your contribution? What is my view on my contribution? No, that's absolute nonsense. What when I did this? That brings understanding, and that makes the information flow as well. So I would say way more important than trying to come up with an analogy or a theme or a practice is to just talk and actually jot down what you say. I mean, I've been in large companies in mergers and acquisitions where they don't even have board minutes. They couldn't be bothered because they talk to each other on the way home, on the way in the morning, they talk during lunch. So they don't need a board to communicate. But other people like the structure, it gives them a bit of background. So I think it depends on yourself, and you have to be true to yourself. You have to do what will work for you. Because if you get yourself into a situation where suddenly you are restricted by what you thought would be your partner, there's no value. And then you start fighting each other, and then we're back in the divorce scenario again.
I mean, it's interesting. I actually just yesterday chatted to somebody about a divorce situation where they'd built up a 7 million rand a year business, get a husband and wife, and now they're getting divorced. And he said, but it was my business. And her answer was, but I supported you in this business.
It's always the classical argument with the divorce.
No, for sure.
What is important, though, and I think we touched on a little bit before, is when you talk about the current South African scenario, you talk about black economic empowerment. There everything is different, because the reason why you do it is different, why you would choose a partner is different, how you go about getting a partner, how you structure the rules so that you make sure that you get the value. Different ballgame altogether. Because they're specific objective oriented. I want to enter a particular market, I need a partner, can take me there. How do I structure it? How do I manage the value that I don't lose my business? And the horror stories are out there.